Hi everybody, welcome to the first campaign diary for our Rime of the Frostmaiden campaign. I say Rime of the Frostmaiden, but it's Rime of the Frostmaiden like you've never seen it before. It's set in my own world of Aracséa. It has a lot of tweaks and changes and a lot of additions, and in some cases, more of a complete overhaul. Yeah, out of than what's in the original campaign book. So this is basically where I'll be documenting events, what happened in the game, my thoughts, etc. And with any luck and with some scheduling allowed, it will be a somewhat weekly occurrence. I don't really have anything interesting or meaningful in terms of like background footage or anything. I didn't record the game per se, though that is an idea I'm open to. So for now, it just might be like random pictures, game footage, or some video game or other miscellaneous nonsense. I'll be putting up maps or anything else which I have resources for on the screen, but besides that, it'll just be regaling you with my words. Anyway, so yes, Aracséa, a setting I've now used and developed over the past few years, was always going to be where I was going to put this sort of campaign, and where better than to yank out Icewind Dale and plop it somewhere where I haven't really done much stuff yet. So the Frostgales were born, and for all intents and purposes, not Icewind Dale and completely different. While names and stuff are somewhat the same, it's not. This book is kind of acted just like a base to kickstart this campaign after only working on it for like the last 2 weeks since I made the decision to do it at the end of Christmas. So it's needed at least work possible to shoe it in place ready for the beginning of this year, and so I haven't really had time to completely change everything, but it's been a good starting point. This campaign, in terms of running alongside where it fits into the world, it runs alongside 2 others that I've got going on, and they're in the region to the south. So it'll end up being more of a link between those and the next campaign ideas, whereas campaign ideas I have, will be when we move the clock forward a bit. It would be impossible for me to bring you up to speed with like the history and the complexities of every facet that's happened thus far, though I am kind of working on a script to recount the details of one of the campaigns that I've done and bring it to YouTube. Watch this space later for that. So instead, I will just fill you in with the necessary details as and when they come up. Maybe there's also a strong possibility that I will forget something. You'll have to excuse me for that, because I've lived in this world for nearly 3 years now, and well, like anything you've spent time creating, you kind of start taking your knowledge of it a bit for granted. So anyway, Rime of the Frostmaiden. So to start, I begin in the usual way of a somewhat expository lore dump of a wider world that gradually brings the focus to the characters. 2 of my players had never played in an Aracséa game before, so it's just a little nugget to give them a hint of that wider world. Sooner or later we move swiftly on to like character introductions. Now I'd set them up in such a way that the characters would all know each other, but not necessarily be like party companion level yet. It's more like passing acquaintances. I'd also linked them through a priestess, a wood elf priestess of Isha, which is like an old Inari god of light, and I'll talk more about the Inari in a video to come or something. And this priestess seemed to know a bit more about each of them than anyone really should. This was Priestess Galriel is her name, and as far as the world is concerned, she's not really anyone of particular note, though as with everything, that could be subject to change depending on how I feel and stuff like that. Anyway, she has helped each of them in their backstories in some way, and in a way they each owe her a debt of some sort. So when, inevitably, the call to adventure comes, when she receives word from a friend in the Frostgales seeking help, the group feel more than ready to accept her plight as she brings them all into the church and asks them to go on a quest for her. She informs them, actually her words specifically, that their time had come, which was something that she had been alluding to each of them separately since they had found themselves in this village in the wilds. And so they went on after that. But before we continue, I've just realised, let's talk about the party for a moment. Now in the group we have two fairly well versed D&D players, at least very well versed role players as well, really. The other is still fairly new to the game. I think it might have been her third or fourth actual proper session, and with a completely new character too, so that props to them for jumping on that challenge. Some time ago, this is how it works with my characters, some time ago I spent a couple hours with each of them coming up with their character histories and stuff, the normal campaign character spiel where you do all that background nonsense, where they fit in, but something extra with this game. We also came up with some sort of secret or potentially dangerous aspect about them that could leave devastating ripples should they come to light if they were ever to be discovered. This was basically me looking at the book, in the campaign book, and seeing the secrets thing and going, no, I'll need to ramp it up a bit more than that if it's going to be something, if I'm going to do it. Playing on the whole idea of the original inspiration for the Rime of the Frostmaiden campaign, the whole, what's his name? John Carpenter's The Thing, that sense of paranoia and that Eldritch-esque horror things. Yeah, really ramp that up. I hope to build that as the sessions go on. But anyway, beyond that, beyond the secret thing, we went further, explaining to some of them, I explained to some of them why, perhaps another reason why they may need to return to the north, because most of them had come from that area of the world. For Mutiny, which is one of the characters' names, she's like an icy blue tiefling ranger. She kept having visions of a sword of black ice and a passage through the Worm's Eye Wood. If you've read the book, you might know what that sort of black ice is, but just to lay it on the ground for you, she is a tiefling heritage of Levistus, which is like the frozen throne kind of thing. Now, in my world, Levistus is actually completely encased in ice, and his role has been taken over by someone else instead. Like, he doesn't have a seat in the Nine Hells at the moment. He's kind of like one of the lost devils, I call them. But he's been slowly calling out to his followers, and that fit in nicely with one of the quests that's actually in the book already. So I thought, great, we've got a frost tiefling, we can have Levistus calling her to the north. Brilliant. So that's that kind of thing. Then we had Stronus, which is a double-braided, cobalt-bangled Jorga. He heard this horned call. I'm going to come up with like a proper name, but the idea is like this call that comes from the big mountain, Mount Minrock, where all the dwarves come from, and it kind of echoes over the Dragon's Tooth Mountains, and it only ever calls out when all of dwarfdom is like in peril, and it like calls for the dwarves to come back to their ancestral homelands, and supposedly only dwarves can hear it. And obviously Stronus would have heard it, and it's kind of like this pull. Oh, I've got to go back, because he really doesn't want to go back, and I'll tell you about that in a different time. But you get the idea. They all had this kind of pull to the north, and I kind of realised there that there are a few words and a few aspects there that might have been lost on some people, but don't worry, it'll all come to light sooner or later. For now, just recognise like Mutiny. Oh, that seems a bit of a weird name. Mighty things all have like a strange one-word name, like Valor or Penance or something like that. It's just how that works. I'll explain that at some point, I guess. And Jorga, you might have heard me say that. That is a name the dwarves of the north, like the true dwarves, the ancestral dwarves, the dwarves that stayed in their homeland. That's what they call themselves. They call themselves the Jorga, and they kind of look down on the more southern dwarves to the south, the other dwarves that people might come to know as. So in short, yeah, most had a reason beyond Galriel's call to adventure to head north, and all had a very good and sometimes terrifying reason not to, which are the secrets we mentioned, and then we'll talk about those at a later date. So they head north and out of the Vindel Wildlands, which is a land just south of where this campaign is going to be set, where the Frostgales are, just south of the Dragon's Tooth Mountains, south of the Worm's Eye Wood, and it's basically a giant like lands of swamps and forests, and actually what you can imagine being where the wood elves are from. And for one reason or other, the characters all found themselves in like the north part of this country, which is this huge, almost like Kashyyyk Shadowlands kind of thing. If you're a Star Wars fan, you might understand that. But it's all, or Mirkwood. If you're a Lord of the Rings fan, it's kind of like a giant, more grandiose Mirkwood. So yeah, they left. They head through the Wormside Wood and into the frigid doom of the Frostgales, and I described like the aurora over the top and all this kind of stuff. They spent some time talking to each other, reaffirming, you know, their acquaintanceness and all that. We get some lovely Scottish Celtic voices that are role-played their way through the first 20 minutes or so from both parties. I did say to them, you'd probably have, if you're from this region, which two of them, their characters are, you would speak in a certain way, so that props on them for doing that. That was good. I did forget to mention the specifics of the entire party. So we have a human barbarian called Raina Flinch. She is of the Thrakari tribe, who are like a human spirit worshipping tribe from the Frostgales. They'll come up at a later date. We have a Jorgen wizard called Stronus Drondala, it's hard to say his second name, who is an aforementioned wizard of Mount Minrock. And of course the Tiefling Ranger of the Vistas, Mutiny. And I forgot to mention, she does have a polar bear by the name of Azazel. Yes, a polar bear. That obviously means Beast Ranger is going down the line. We're starting at level 2, for anyone that's wondering. I don't like starting at level 1 because you just feel so weak. Level 2 at least has some sort of threat of imminent death, plus, you know, getting to do stuff. So after a 10-day or so, they come under attack by goblins after, you know, travelling through the Worm's Eye Wood for some time. They're almost at Bryn Shander, the first place where they're meant to go to meet up with their associate, which I might not have mentioned. They're meant to meet someone called Hruna Blackshire, and that's who Galriel had told them to meet. So yeah, attacked by goblins, classic first encounter. There were 5 goblins to be exact, I think, so it shouldn't be too difficult, quite easy, and I was rolling really badly. It was there where I would start to get, this was kind of like how I would get a feel for this theatre of the mind combat over Discord, because that's what we've done. We've not done any maps, you know, like any battle maps or anything. It's all theatre of the mind. So obviously, like lacking a grid and miniatures, which is my normal style, like quite a lavish DM setup. In my home games, the obvious drawbacks would be like a possible lack of like tactical thinking and stuff like that. So you kind of have to make up for it with a theatre of the mind game, and I think I found a good balance. You kind of have to just make up for it through descriptive detail and a focus on role-play moments in combat. Something that doesn't, I feel like, might not come up in many games, but tried to focus on it here, and I think with those things in mind, I think the combat went really quite well, actually. I didn't really think, as someone who's a very like dudes on a map player, it didn't feel bad at all. It felt nice and easy to run. It felt very quick to get into combat. There was no like really elaborate setups with maps and things. Initiative was run really quickly. Yeah, it was really quite, as long as you can keep track of everything in your head, and you can remember to, like, beginning of everyone's turn, describe the new layout of things and things like that. It works really quite nicely, and plus it enables me as a somewhat amateur / professional writer and DM to really embellish and just develop on top of what the characters want to do and that kind of stuff. Just be descriptive and be a proper like storyteller around the fire kind of things. An idea I really quite like. But moving on. So they kill the goblins, no trouble, of course not. It's only 5 goblins, CR quarter or whatever they are. And they notice that they have, or Mutiny notices, they have like a thin powdered like war paint on them, at least covering half of their body. And Mutiny, she notes that this sort of camouflage is not normally something goblins would come up with by themselves. And she concludes that they must have been told to wear it, which... hats off to her. It's good foreshadowing for later, a good deduction, and hats off to me, as I said, foreshadowing for later. So they finally get to Bryn Shander after another night's sleep, and I described like this large 2,000 foot in diameter wooden palisaded city. They pretty much, I imagine, I described like the heraldry on the side of like on these white banners, the black antlers with the golden shaft. If you haven't seen it in the book, it's quite a nice introduction that I obviously made up for the thing. Well, moving on anyway. they were pretty much, as they head towards the town centre, they were pretty much immediately approached by a dwarf, and they were a hooded dwarf, I should mention, a hood in a dark green cloak. They were apprehensive at first. I thought they were a very suspicious group, something I hope to play with later as they play on their suspicions. And it's good to have paranoid people already in a game that will be about paranoia a lot, and there's already got it in session 1, so this is great. But yeah, they had no reason to fear. This was of course Hruna Blackshire, the NPC they were trying to meet. And after some chit chat in a while, she kind of says to them, why don't we head over to the north? Look, we can, you know, talk out our business without prying ears, kind of thing. So they head over to the north. Look, that's an inn that's in the book, and I imagine it as kind of your prancing pony of Bree sort of a thing. It's loud, it's rowdy, it's got a good place for adventurers to pick up a room or two, that sort of place. So they sit and chat. She reveals to them, or rather mutiny points out, that she's got a signet ring. She has a mark of like a ring, meaning she belongs to this organisation called the Monuments Vigil. As a group, that Stronus knows as the Georga in the party. It's kind of like it's an organisation that has like Georgan interests at heart, but they achieve its goals in sometimes undwarf-like ways. You know, like stealth and subtle things that aren't very dwarfy. As in like the classical sense, but basically, yeah, it's a faction that acts for the best interests of Georga, but in sometimes questionable ways. So after some chat and a brief explanation of the rhyme, I forgot to mention, like, as they crossed into Frostgales, like, it immediately got cold. There's this constant turquoise and orange aurora above them at all times. The sun does not shine, like, ever. It's always overshadowed. So yeah, Hruna kind of explains to them like what's been happening the last few years, and like the various theories behind it, the local theories, all foreshadowing for later. So it's the idea of like there's a cult sacrificing people to Aurora, the winter god, and there's Hruna suspects some Dwargar relation because of course Georga always do. They're like the betrayers. They should the ones who follow a fallen Stone Lord. The Stone Lords are the Dwarven gods, the old Dwarven gods of the north in Aracséa. But moving on, after like some more chat, she generally trying to ease the players down. They were still very suspicious of her there, that she bought food for them, but they were still very suspicious. But she was basically just trying to lower their guard down, make them feel at home after what she knows might have been a harrowing journey. She then presents to them the task, which is basically the Foaming Mugs quest from the book, but with some tweaks here and there and a completely different ending, which we'll go into detail. So that night, for some reason, Rayna and Stronus decide to have a drinking contest. So they have a drinking contest, which is okay. That kills some time, and then they head out north through the north gate and head northeast towards Kelvin's Cairn, which is on the Icewind Dale map. I have recalled it the temple grave of Gwendol for the purpose of the dwarven member in the party, and it's basically like an Egyptian Valley of the Kings kind of thing. It's a giant mountain tomb, a temple devoted to like Jorgan ancestors and stuff like that. Jorgans are very interested in their history and preserving their past, recovering artifacts pertaining to like their past vast kingdoms. So yeah, taking care of your ancestors is like a big deal for Jorgan society, and why they'd have like a massive part of they'd literally devote an entire mountain to that sort of thing. What happened then? Oh yes, they pretty much almost got lost in a freak blizzard that came out of nowhere. They make some die rolls, they do some skill checks, and yeah, Stronus gets left behind for a time. I had planned like the blizzard to die out before anything happened, and I kind of made it out like it was a supernatural act of Aurora, the who's like the old god of winter. She's kind of like my replacement for Oriel, the actual Frostmaiden. Instead it's going to be like this Lost Lord, or something nearer. Then I'll talk about that later. Yeah, the gods of the north, they're called the Lost. So whenever I say Lost Lords, the set of deities in the north are called the Lost Lords of the north, and Aurora is one of them. She's the Frostmaiden, the Winter Queen kind of thing. Yeah, so I had the blizzard ease off, like just as soon as things were about hinting towards danger, and I did that to try and show the group that that the wilderness travel is going to be dangerous in this. You need to take it seriously. People can get lost, and things can go south quickly out here. Things aren't as they seem. Kind of gave hints to that. There's like cracking ice and things like that. People started worrying about falling below, icy crevasse and stuff like that. I think it worked. They started talking about tying themselves together and things like that. So I think that worked out as like a boom. This is a threat to be aware of in the campaign, and I like doing that in like the first sessions of a campaign. It's the sprinkles of things to expect and things to watch out for, so you get a taste of everything. I think that worked out nicely there. Fast forward a bit, where they find the frozen corpse of one of the couriers transporting the iron ingots from the Foaming Mugs quest. Except there are no ingots, and then again, yeah, and the rest of this pretty much happens the same as in the book. There's like the corpse with the head bitten off and all that kind of stuff. There's some tracks. This is all pretty much as written from that if you've got the book. If not, then it's basically they find like a completely frozen over corpse. There's like a bunch of tracks. They're too small to be like a yeti, which is what Hruna said might have taken the couriers, but they're also too large to be like a dwarf. So, or whatever, I've probably got lost some. I think I said that wrong, but never mind. So they follow them, and the Mutiny, the ranger, identifies the tracks as, with quite a good survival roll, I remember, as clearly being goblin, and they follow the tracks for some time, and eventually they come up to like about 120 feet away. These 6 goblins, 5 normal goblins and like a goblin boss, are like on this wagon driven by 2 really angry polar bears. These goblins I explained to them, are like similarly adorned in this like white dusty paint over the top. And this combat was interesting. I kept reminding them, I don't know if this is just to get the ranger to act on this, but I don't know. She's a new player, so yeah, I think like some DM nudging is okay from now and then, like reminding them of things that they can do, like reminding of, oh, you can do this as a nature check, or you can do this, you can do this. I think that's fine for like newer players. It helps them realise what they can do. So I kept reminding about this goblin boss and how it kept unsuccessfully trying to get the polar bears to move, and how angry the polar bears look. And after a while of like, the barbarian player just obliterating the other goblins, I think Mutiny came round to the idea of what I was trying to get across, and she just shot the shackles, keeping the polar bears in check. And Stronus, who's a divination wizard, used one of his portents rolls to automatically like give her a 17, then plus on like her +7 archery stuff. Yeah, we were looking like 23s, 24s to hit this metal chain from like 120 feet away. You were gonna hit it. That's just, it happens. So that goes off, a great moment there, and then the polar bear just turns and just ravages the goblin boss to pieces. And like of seeing that, the other goblins just pretty much just give up. And the polar bear still wants blood. It's fuming. It's rabid at the mouth. It's got red eyes. It's going for them. The players, the barbarian in particular, the one who's in sync with like the animal spirits, takes some time to try and calm the polar bears down, and it does take a while. Like it takes a few rolls here and there. The goblin is trying to run away, and Stronus has this moment where he tries to catch them. So I make him do a dexterity check. He rolls a natural 1. But the thing about Stronus is that his has a unique background, which I've given him. He's a Georga of happenstance. Now the idea is, and this is genius, is that he's kind of lied his way through like his training in the Arcanum. He's a Cobalt Bangle, which means he's a mage. He's born into that, and he has to do that because he's born into it. But the idea is like he's a divination wizard. He cheated on the test, kind of thing, you know. And like things seem to go right for him, even if they shouldn't. It's like lying through his teeth, kind of. You can imagine this happening a lot in this kind of caste society where you're just kind of making it up as you go along, and things seem to work out for whatever reason. And I've called it like something like the gift of Arkanthol or something like that. Arkanthol is like the Stone Lord for treasure and good luck and fortune and things like that. And this guy has kind of got like his favour for some reason. Actually, he rolls a natural 1, but I have it like that acts as like a natural 20 in a weird way. So he like stumbles onto the floor, like rolls a few good feet, and the other two characters are laughing. But then I explain to them where you land, you plop on top of one of the goblins where it was trying to run, and you're just sitting on a goblin as it was trying to escape. And it's like, and they were like, "What the hell?" It was a great moment, and I think one that Stronus's player was just, oh yeah, I'm going to enjoy this feature. It was a fun little moment there when I get to see these things. So yeah, they convince the polar bears, they capture some of the things, and they interrogate the goblins. And the goblins don't have very much information. They say to them, "Look, we won't." They're like, "Not meant to kill anyone." Yes, and they're trying to explain to them, you know, they weren't meant to antagonize anyone. They're only going back to the site where, you know, some other previous group had already found and brought back these metal things. No one had searched the wagon yet. By this point, they've now searched the wagon and found that there's nothing in there. It's literally just like a mobile goblin home with like some straw beds and things like that, which leaves them a bit confused. And I kind of have to remind them the goblin has said they only went there to pick up from a previous any leftovers from a previous expedition. So they continue this interrogation. I kind of explain to them that they've been told to go there by someone or some people called Nark and Squawk, and this again is like a huge deviation from the book. So they take this goblin, Toby is his name. I don't know if I mentioned that earlier, but if not, there you go. His name was Toby. Who leads them south to a cave in the forests to the south, and that's like in the forest just above Goodmead and Dugan's Hole. Mutiny manages to expertly avoid the trap at the entrance of this cave. She has the new ranger's canny ability, which basically gives her expertise in a skill, and she chose investigation, which was a very good decision. She mastered that role. She finds the perfect way to avoid it. Kind of like releases this net of brambles and rocks, and yeah, avoided the party a lot of damage. So they did that. Then they marched forward, proceeding into the camp, and I thought to myself, oh great, so the next encounter is going to be a combat encounter. They've passed the first challenge, the next one will be a good combat encounter to flesh out the end of the session, because we were coming to the end by this point. I had already planned the end point. But no, that wasn't going to happen. So let's rewind a bit. They start smelling this foul, like fecal matter and rancid meat kind of smell. There's also like a warmth coming from inside this cave. And then Stronus, who had already ritual cast comprehend languages to be able to, you know, listen to what Toby was saying in Goblin. His two wargs fight round in the nearby cavern. Now wargs, I think this is like it in the book, they have like their own language themselves, and they are somewhat intelligent. You know, they have some, like, at least some level of intelligence equal to a goblin, and you can hear them fighting about meat, so give that back, you maggoty, and all that kind of stuff. He hears the two wargs fighting, and he thinks, I'm going to communicate with them. And it's at this point when I completely forgot that comprehend languages does not let you communicate. But in hindsight, what happened was such a great moment that I've kind of just messaged the player and saying, look, that probably shouldn't have happened. I forgot about this, but we're going to put it down to your dwarf feature that you've got as to why it works. So your character next session, by the way, should probably be like, that should not have worked what I did, just to let them know. But anyway, what happened, he went round the corner and just went, we've got trade, we want to do some trade with Nark and Squawk. I forgot to mention, During the interrogation, Toby mentioned, and the players somewhat picked up on this, but didn't quite seem to add two and two together. Toby mentioned that Nark and Squawk, whoever this were, they were looking to trade, and I think the players thought they meant trade for Toby's life. But in fact, Nark and Squawk, as the party were about to discover, had very different ideas about like their role in society as a whole. And that will make more sense as we go on. So yeah, he jumps around this corner, he starts sort of saying to them, well, we want to do some trade, and like the Wargs, and they have like a performance check and all this kind of stuff, and the Wargs let them pass unscathed. It was such a great moment. I just couldn't reward it. I had to reward it for, you know, I couldn't just let something like that go. It's a great moment there. So they turn the last, like, they go down the last bit of the cavern, they turn the last corner and they see like this orange flicker on the wall. They go through to this large room, like this 60-foot wood room, and there's like this bonfire in the middle, all this stuff. There's an iron gate closes behind them, first of all, that's what happens. And they can see like there's this like roaring bonfire, like I said, but there's like a whole goat roasting on top of them. They can smell this fine lamb. There's like a honey smell coming from this room. There's like a barrel of mead next to it. There's like shadows of like goblins above them in like higher balconies, chattering away and stuff like that. And drawing from, and I describe it very cinematically. I might put up the thing on the screen, I don't know, but they see like a hairy paw draw something in like a bronze chalice from the barrel of mead, and attached to that paw is a bugbear, and I described the bugbear as having like a crude monocle over one of its eyes, an upturned boot on its head like a top hat, and like this patchwork penguin-tailed coat on its torso, and it's just like, at this point the party's just started to like either going what, or just laughing at the idea of this fancy dressed bugbear. And I've been sitting on this idea for a while, and I just thought it was great. It could be an interesting twist to some of the stuff in the book, because I think one of my players has read a lot of the first chapter of this book, so it's nice to add some extra spice as well as just adapting it for my campaign. So anyway, yeah, they see this guy, this bugbear, and they also see like this blood red hawk on its shoulder eating some like lamb meat off out its own claws, and they obviously all think to themselves, they all mutter, they're like, oh yeah, this is Nark and Squawk. One of them, I think Mutiny, briefly spies like the hint of like a silvery circlet under the bugbear's hair on its hat. An item which they will later find, should they choose to kill Nark, to be a lesser circlet of intellect. Now, if you don't know what a circlet of intellect does, circlet of intellect makes your intelligence 19, like just across the board. A lesser circlet, I'm going to make it be like 16 or something like that, but it's a big boost for a bugbear, and that obviously will explain a lot of these intelligence decisions that have been having a later, and perhaps his attire might be explained by this, and perhaps his worldview, which we'll discover at the beginning of the next session, will be enlightened by this. If they detect this circlet at all, I know Mutiny has spied it, but she's not arcanely gifted at all, so you'll see. Anyway, Nark pours each of them a drink, and the session ends with Nark saying, finally, down to business. Like he's not like taken aback by them being there. He's glad to see other people. I think for all intents, Nark probably thinks these are traders coming from 10 towns or something. And for you, like you and I, or for like players that have looked at this stuff carefully, if we went through, this is where they can start putting through the threads together and going, oh, we weren't, you know, it's things like we weren't supposed to kill anyone in 10 towns, we weren't supposed to do all of this kind of stuff, weren't supposed to attack, harm people, like what the goblins have said. He wants to trade, and you kind of look at, you see this and you think, right, this is the intelligence behind this operation. What the hell? It starts asking those kind of questions, and you can kind of see where it's all coming together here. But that, yeah, basically that was it. Obviously there was a lot more detail like during the game. There's a lot more goings on in the background, and with any luck some of that will get uncovered as they proceed with the conversation with Nark, details that will come to light, I imagine, next time. In conclusion though, overall super happy with how the session went. I've left like I said, a ton of detail out, but I'm sure it's fine. I didn't want this video to go on for too long. Combat was my biggest concern going into this, off the top of my head. But no, but I think looking back on the session, it felt fluid. It felt, in general, quite exciting. It was nice and descriptive. It's like a joint storytelling session, which is, at the end of the day, was like, it's the roots of D&D, isn't it? It's just joint storytelling. So yeah, session 1, a success in my books. I hope you enjoyed that. If not, then I apologise for my incessant rambling. Please leave a comment on how you think I can do better for the next campaign diary. And if your thing's going to be write a script, I did. But I like to go on tangents, so maybe that's something I can improve on. I don't know. Super excited to jump back into it, actually, uncover some more of the story and see more of these elaborate backstories we've created unravel and potentially ruin the group, something that we will cover in coming videos when they can become appropriate, I guess. My players at the end of the session, I recall saying that they had a lot of information. The thing they enjoyed, they liked having a lot of the information that I could provide, using like a pre-built world that I've built over the last 3 years. I'm able to do that. I can give them like, this is what your characters would know, and give them like pages of stuff like on places, people, traditions, cultures, like the gods they would know. Granted, most of this I did in 2 weeks because the Frostgales didn't exist prior to Christmas, but hey, I'm a world builder, this is what I do. Yeah, so a lot of them used them to pretty good effect too as well, which is something I enjoyed, like seeing people use my work. Strange Sisters Play in particular had a healthy amount of information about Georgian culture, which I pretty much came up with in the last 3 weeks, like the whole idea of like the different bangles, which for people watching, how that works is like they have separated into it's a caste system. The different bangles denote where you lie in that class. The Cobalt bangle means you're a member of the Arcanum, and it's like 4th up on the scale or something like that. And like the different braids, like some dwarves have like a triple braid or a single braid. That's kind of like a mark of proficiency. And they also have, on top of that, they have like gems that they can put in their bangles, which denote certain things. Those are almost like medals that you can get. Might go more into detail that in a different video, but we'll see. So yeah, anyway, Rime of the Frostmaiden, session 1. I'm going to call that Into the Frostgales as an episode title. A big success from my end. Very, very happy. We'll hopefully have you along for the journey as it happens. Yeah, it's been a good time. Looking forward to a good year of D&D. We'll speak to you next time.